this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Part 2 of this session is getting stuff in pots. No mounts, it's all going in pots, but it's not all necessarily going in the same mix or media, or mix of media, however you want to look at it. Now I'm going to film it all. I'll decide what to do with the clips when I've got them all. But I must say I'm tired before I even start. I've got an assortment of pots. I've got some of these strange looking things. These actually are great for air with a massive air cone. It almost comes over halfway up the pot, but they're not very stable because they've got such a narrow base and a wide top. So if you put a large plant in, they fall over. They probably need to stand in a clay pot. I've got some small pots, various, some next size up, various, so I'm just putting these up under the camera out of the way because otherwise they'll be in the way. I've got some that I've already made holes in at some point. Then I've got these opaque ones, but these are big, so there aren't many plants here that can go in something that big. And then last but not least are the flat wide ones for shallow rooted plants that spread outwards. So that's my assortment of pots. I've got some of the new bark from Sarah at Burnham's, classed as medium, but I'd say it's nearer small, but I like it and she uses it on lots of stuff and it works okay. I've got my sponge rock, which I may or may not use, I haven't made my mind up yet. I've got some charcoal, I will be using some of that. And I've got some chunky bark for crocking in case I need it. And I've got some of my cocoa husk. Some of that's going to get used, I'm sure. And I may have to break off because I may decide I want a lot of chopped up, you know, which takes time with the scissors to cut up the... Or what I could do is put a handful down and take the big bits out. That would leave the small bits, wouldn't it? I've got some stakes in case I need them. My trimming scissors in case there's any major bits I've missed. Some raffia, some tape and some chopping scissors. So now it's just a matter of deciding what to do with each individual plant. And the first two I want to do are these little Restrepias of Hannah's. Now what I did so that they didn't get separated is I put them in a little tray with their label. So these two little plants, I don't want their labels getting muddled up. It wouldn't be the end of the world if they did, but I'd rather keep the right names with them. Right, so these are going to go back in small pots, but not quite so small as they were in before. And I quite like the look of these little flat. See, they're not very deep, so relative, they're wide. And these are going to go in bark. And not much else. This bark is quite a mix, really. It's got some slices, it's got some bits of wood in it. No bark seems to be absolutely brilliant nowadays. It's got some sticky bits in, which if you can see them, take them out. You know, little wispy bits like that. If you can't be bothered, it's not the end of the world. The volume of those compared with the rest of the media is tiny, so it's not going to do much harm, if any. But there are some quite sticky bits in here. Some flaky bits as well. I'm not going to spend too long mucking about like that. Right, so that's it. Crocking, tiny little bit. Just to stop this small stuff falling out the holes, really. That's all. Now, that's bark. We will have some charcoal in with that because this is Restrepias. They need to stay wet, yeah? Evenly moist. And as such, this bark's going to stay wet. And if it's going to stay wet, it's going to attempt to break down a bit quicker than it would do if it was used on a plant that had a wet-dry cycle, where it wouldn't stay wet so long. Black hands again. And the charcoal will help keep it sweet, help get some of the impurities out as the bark starts to age. That's the theory anyway. difficult to prove one way or the other. But charcoal gets used in filters successfully. Now I could put some sponge rock in with that, but quite honestly I don't see a lot of point. These are very fine root systems, and the bark is small enough for them, and with some charcoal I think that's good enough. See, now before I'd have put quite a bit of moss in. I tell you what we could put in there. We could put in some of the cocoa husk to help retain the moisture. That doesn't want much, just some pieces. Oh, rather than cut up the big pieces, just take them out. Use them somewhere else. So a little bit of the coconut husk in here will help keep that moist. Leaves. Right, so that's the mix then. Bark, some coconut husk, not a lot, and some charcoal. And that should, the coconut husk will help the bark stay moist longer. The charcoal will make it last longer. Sort of. Right, that'll do. Now, this little one here ended up with not too many roots. Nonetheless, that is more than adequate for a plant that size. We will put some in, sit the roots gently on, and then we don't press these down. All we do is wiggle, wiggle, tap, tap, shake, shake, and just get this media loosely round them. They don't need to be compact. Some orchids in pots like to be tightly packed. They really do like their media pressed down firmly. Restrepias, their roots just wiggle their way in around the loose media, and they're quite happy like that. They don't need to be firmly potted. So all that needs is a tap to settle it in around the roots. Yep, it's okay, that'll water in nicely. The only thing is it's not quite upright, the plant isn't quite upright, it's sunk. So I will press down there a little bit and top that side up, just to keep it upright so that the leaves come out of the centre. So that's one done. I'm keeping the same label for now. Next one, exactly the same. Crocking, same mix, a little bit in. Now this one's got a bigger root system. This one had a better root system, and I trimmed none of that. I can see a couple of dead ones in there, but to try and get in there with a pair of scissors, I'll end up cutting good ones off. So I decided whatever's there is staying. Yeah. Same again, just let it fall down in between the roots. You don't need pushing down hard, just gently let it fall down. Notice I'm coming right up to the base of the plant. With Restrepias, you can just put the base of the plant under the media, but only just. Don't sink it deep, the top of the plant will rot. Same with most orchids really. But with the Restrepias, you can go right up to the base of the plant and a little above it, round the edges, not in the middle. Is that upright? Yep, that's good. A little bit full, that pot, so when I pour water on that to water it, a lot of the media will probably come out over the sides. But once it's done it a couple of times, it will stop doing it and it will settle down in the pot as it gets watered. So again, label. Right, that's those two Restrepias done, the little ones. Now, I think the big one just as well go in the same mix, because the logic of, oh, it's a bigger plant, it will need a bigger grade media, that's cobblers. It's still a Restrepia. If it was this big, it still needs the same mix, yeah? But what it will need is a bigger pot. Now we struggle, because I've got a grade of pot missing. Can I get it in there? Yes, nicely. Right, bit of crocking. Relatively shallow rooted Restrepias, they can push their roots deep, but they can also live in a shallow pot quite happily. They will use a deep pot if you give it to them, but a deep pot will stay wet longer yeah, which with Restrepias is not a bad thing as long as it's not soggy. Right, so that's our bark. What else did we put in there? Charcoal, dirty stuff, and we put some coconut husk in there, didn't we, to help keep it moist. Ooh, a couple of giant bits there, glad them out. I don't suppose they would hurt. This stuff does break, it tears. If you look at it lengthways, it will break lengthways into pieces like that. Some of them are very hard though, and but they do break. Yeah, so it's not rock hard stuff like bark, it's soft, and there is some fibrous element with it as well. I don't mind that, but I don't like great big bits. Right, that will do. Enough picking around. A lot to do here. A little bit in the bottom because this is quite an extensive root system. And then we will have to twist the pot round on this one to get those roots to tuck in. Like that. Get all the leaves upright and the blooms. It's actually in bloom, this one. Down side. One side, and then go literally 180 degrees around the other side, the opposite side, push the plant over against that and do that bit. So you've done the two opposite sides now. Now you can come round and do what I would call the quarters, 90 degrees, and do those bits. And then you know you've got the lot, because you've been methodical. That's a big word for the afternoon, isn't it? I am pushing a little harder this time. The plant's got to stay upright. Settle that in. Check for big air gaps. We haven't got any. And that'll do. There is no label in this one. I had two that came from the Eric Young Foundation. I know them by their size because I've got two giant Restrepias, Hannah's two little ones, and that one is in the middle. So I know it's the one that came from the Eric Young Foundation, and I will do a label for it, but there isn't one at the moment. So there's that one. Good watering. Get that one soaked in. Right, what else can go in this media? Masdevallia. That root system looked quite bad, and having taken off the manky bits, what was left was actually quite nice. I've potted up Masdevallias with a lot worse root systems than that, so I think this one should pick up quite nicely, but it did have a tiny little piece that's got virtually no roots, and I don't think that bit will make it. But I'm going to put it in a place where if it doesn't make it, it'll just pull out. It'll just pull out of the pot. So that's a separate piece as well. So let's just gather all the pieces together at the same height and we'll pot them all up together. And if only one piece grows, it's not the end of the world. Now that needs to go in a small pot. How small? Will it go in that flat one? No, roots are too long. They'd end up snapping, so let's go in the next size up, which is one of these. Oh, throw them all in the sink, why don't you? What I've got, it's the one with the biggest air cone. No, they're all the same. Not to worry. Right, one of those, bit of crocking. Again, not too much, because these are quite deep roots. And this is a Masdevallia, which in theory needs exactly the same treatment as the Restrepias, but I would suggest a Masdevallia should err on the side of caution with the constantly soggy and should head towards dryness but not actually get there. It's quite an art getting that right, but if you keep them soggy you'll lose roots. But in new media, it's almost impossible to keep a plant soggy. It just don't happen. And again, we will have a reasonable chunk of this coconut husk, minus these giant pieces. There are some quite big pieces in there, aren't there? They'll do for other stuff. So we've got some moisture retention, got some purification, and your bog standard bark for the base of the mix. Let's see if this works. The one thing it should do is not break down too quickly, and in addition to that, not become acidic when it stays wet for quite a few days. The charcoal will stop that happening, basically. So now we've got to be gentle, because although these roots look big and fleshy, I suspect they will snap quite easily. And those are growing root tips down there, even though they haven't got a green tip on them. Not all Masdevallias have the green tips. They are growing roots, those are. So I need them safe. I'm going to have to do a little bit of wiggling because there's a hole in the middle of the plant. I need that full. I need media in that centre portion. Like a production line here, isn't it? Well, it is in effect, isn't it? I mean, it's a lot of pots to do all at once. A lot of people wouldn't take on that number of plants in one go. But I still maintain that one lot of mess is, oh, that's that silly little bit. I wonder if that is going to be capable of actually rooting. Let's poke it back in. It's got to be given a chance. You never know. You might not make it. But we've got several pieces here that are not behaving. So do I tie them or do I press the media down? Try pressing the media down a bit. See if it will just... I don't think this is going to work because I can't get the media too high around the base of the plant. So if it flops, then it'll just have to flop over, won't it? Oh, that's not too bad. And then we'll see if the bud actually makes it or not. That'll do. That'll do, as long as it stays there when I water it. So there's the 3 pieces in there. That's just a Masdevallia hybrid, so no need to worry about keeping a label with it. Right, let's do the tiny little piece of Miltoniopsis. I don't think this is going to make it personally. It just hasn't got enough roots on it. But the new little growth here does have some signs of new roots, so it might just catch. I personally don't think it will. But it was worth a try. Well, that'll have to go in the tiniest of pots. Trouble is with that big leaf sticking up. Well, I can't get a pot much smaller than that, can I? Miltoniopsis. All of the others went in coconut husk, chopped up small. I can't be bothered to do that separately this time round and start chopping it up because I don't think the plant's going to make it. All I'm doing is breaking up the larger pieces that I've got here, so that I've got small, but it's going to have some bark and some charcoal in with it anyway, so I'm just going to use what I've got here. Just take out big bits basically, leaving it as small a mix as possible, fine mix, and then we'll see if See if this coconut husk will induce some roots. I'm going to go a bit heavier with the coconut husk because it's a Miltoniopsis. And I do have another Miltoniopsis waiting in the wings there, so I think we'll mix up, quite a big bit, we'll mix up a fair bit, you know, a bit heavier on the coconut husk. Just literally because that's how I've decided to do the Miltoniopsis. And the fact that we've come away from the hybrids to the species, I don't see what the logic of changing my mind would be. I decided that the coconut husk was going to be the good thing for the Miltoniopsis. Stays moist, got some air around it, and with this little bit of charcoal in it, it should stay sweet as well. Miltoniopsis really do not like acidity in the soil, in the mix. So no moss deals with that, and we still need to keep them moist, which is what the coconut husk does. So, you know, this is my idea now, that this is how the Miltoniopsis will be potted. And all I've got to do is flop this in around the edges gently. Again, brittle roots, delicate roots, with care. And leave enough room for the plant to grow on across the pot, should it choose to do so. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to not die and to grow. Right, just about covering those new roots. There we go. Just about. It's a bit wobbly. I wonder if I can get a... I doubt if a stake will even stay in this media. It's so shallow. One down each side of that old bulb. Is it worth tying that? No, I think they'll hold it just by being there. That'll do. And then if it grows some roots, it'll hold itself, won't it? So that's that one. Now we come back to the other species. Now this one ended up with more reasonable roots than I thought it was going to have, and there are still a few dead ones in the middle, but while I was trimming them, there were some live ones in the pile, and I thought, time to stop. But that's got you know, when I got this plant it had hardly any roots at all, so it has grown some roots. It's coming on, and now that it's got some roots, you know, it's pushed up some new growths, and maybe we'll get one to bloom in the not too distant future. The plant is big enough, it is a miniature, but it's now got some roots and a couple of growing tips, not many, but a couple. So we're getting there, and we have a new growth here which may still produce some roots, one in the centre of the plant, and then this brand new little one here which will produce some new roots, providing the plant doesn't go into shock from being repotted. Now again, small pot. Yep. Prepping, and I haven't got enough mix there. Just stick some more coconut husk in it, so that it's more coconut husk than anything else. Oh, big bits. They're going to come in useful one day. I've got a good mind to keep them separate. But the idea with the smaller medium pieces is just tear them, just make them smaller quickly. Breaks very, very easily. Too big. That'll do. Stick a bit more charcoal in there. Yep, happy with that. Some in the bottom. I'm going to try and twist this in and get it to sit nicely. These are delicate roots again. I'm being very, very gentle. This is just getting tapped with the end of my finger. No force involved at all. It's just enough to move it, basically. Just enough to get it to sink. And once it's all roughly in place all round the plant, you can give it a good bang and settle it. Get it to sink down and firm up a bit. Right, how are you doing? That's a line from, oh, what was it? Friends, that was Joey, wasn't it? How are you doing? You can tell I'm tired, can't you? Right, you'll do. New label for you because the old one's a bit manky. Right, what have we got left then? We've got this Dracuvalia that's really not very good at all. It may or may not grow. That piece of rhizome is only just attached, but not very well. But that is a new growth. I'm not even sure these roots are viable. But they're all there is to get it to sit in the pot. So they're staying there, if for no other reason. What would be worrying is that, yeah, marks on leaves are all very well, but when they start forming distinct circles, we may have a problem. But those are very old leaves. We will see. And that piece, those roots are okay. So what we'll do is we'll put them in together and see if it will grow. Now unfortunately I don't think those roots, if I try and get them in that small pot, will they twist or will they just snap? No, they will twist. Good, that means I can get it in that small pot, but I won't crock it, otherwise there won't be enough depth. Right, some bark. More cocoa husk. Too much here. Giant piece again. Doesn't really matter. These big bits could stay as they are. They don't really need to be broken up. Got us a real husky bit there, isn't there? Fibrous piece. Break that up. Right. A bit more charcoal. Obviously I'm not measuring anything. Now some people do take great pains to actually get a mix the same each time. So they would have like 2 potfuls of that, 1 pot full of that, and they do measure very carefully. And they would end up with, you know, a known mix in set proportions, which you could write down, and then you could vary it slightly and then keep notes on which ones do best. But I've often thought that you can go to all those extremes and care to actually do all that and make those notes and everything, but your plants are different, and different plants will react and grow differently in different medias. So you could take three plants that to all intents and purposes look the same, from the same nursery and everything, and pot them up with slightly different media and they grow differently. They're not necessarily growing differently because of the media. They could just be that one's got 2 more roots than another one. And when you've got a poor root system, 5 roots is better than 3. You see what I'm getting at? So it might not be the media. So you could be recording what is in effect false data inadvertently. Therefore for me, it makes the effort not worthwhile. However, you could try totally different media in which case you might not need the notes. You know, if you see what I mean. You try something in pure bark, something in a mix with bark and something else, and you know, you could vary the mix with different plants or the same plants, if you know what I mean, to see which grow best. But again, you've got the variables of the plants themselves. I don't think you're going to stand up very well, are you? I'm not even sure you're going to grow, so. Just about standing up, only just. There's a big leaf. There's a big leaf. In behind a big leaf. And it holds it still. There we go. That's that one done. That did have a... Knock the camera over, why don't... Sorry about that. But that made you jump, didn't it? As I went to get this label, I caught my thumb on the tripod. Anyway, that does have a label. I may do another one, but I want to keep that label with it for now. So that's that. Now we're getting to big, and I'm running out of places to put things. Right, so that leaves the Dendrobium, nobly type. There are some new roots growing, which I'm surprised about given the time of year, but we've got some. The number of roots I cut off was minimal, but I did need to trim some. Looks like I could do with trimming a couple more here too. Oh, I'll leave them, they might branch. Now we switch, because now I want to get that in a pot. This is going to grow next year. Now that it's done that, next year it's going to do that again at least. Yeah. So it's going to need some room. So I'm going to put it in a slightly larger pot for me. So I don't normally overpot Dendrobium, but I'll crock it. And that's just going in bark. That's not going in anything else. That's just bark this time. So we'll set that up with the latest growth right in the middle of the pot and just fill it up. And because the roots are quite spaced out, there won't be any air holes. And if there are any air holes, it doesn't matter. It's a Dendrobium. They don't mind air around the roots. Now, please stay upright. Oh, jolly good. So I just need to get some round the back here. And round the back I can push down a bit, just to get a bit of security. And not push down round the front where the base of the new growth is. Yeah, that's that one done. The base not covered, just sat on the media, not in it, on it. You're going to wobble, I can tell. So if I find a clip. It's a very fat pseudo bulb, so something like that should do it. Yeah. I'll hold it. Doesn't have to be tight, just has to stay with the cane basically so that it doesn't fall. So that's that one in the sink. Now the difficult one. There's only one left now, and that's the Rossio glossum. And what looks like a good root system, I'm sorry it wasn't. It was a lousy root system and they were nearly all gone. And some of these still are, look, you can see. I haven't got them all yet, which is why I kept my scissors here. They were soggy. So they're like that, all squishy. Even the end of that is squishy. But I can't take them all off. But what we do have is new roots coming. So we do have some growing root tips, not many, but some. So we've just got to hope that this picks up. These roots were awful, they really were. Again, too wet and not enough air around them. So what are you going to go in that you'll stay in? Go in a holy one with lots of air. Yes, you can go in there. The next question is, what in? What am I going to plant this in? The crocking to get up around the air cone. Remember that this root system's not very good, so it's going to be shallow in the pot. So it's going to have to go, not have too much media. So what are you going to go in then? Bark. I think we'll stick with the mix, but I need some more bark. I'll be back.